Chicago,
Yeah,
Chicago.
this entire thing's making it
It's
a
a city
video.
that's exciting. It's a city that's inviting. It's a
Not
city
just the
built
band.
just like me. You know that banger, bro?
The former showman Grayson himself.
This fucking guy.
Let's
It's
do it,
notorious.
boys. Kings, queens, and in-betweens, welcome back to the City Boys Spotlight. On this series, we are covering all 30 MLS teams. We want to cover their history, talk about their squads, and give our predictions for how they'll do in the 2025 season. Just before we get started, if you don't mind, we are trying to get to 100 subscribers. We're 10 away as of the recording of this video. We're so close. Please subscribe. We would appreciate it so much. Anyways, I am joined by two of my best friends. Grayson, how are you doing tonight, boss?
I was doing great, but I just hit my funny bone like hard on my chair.
Ooh,
But otherwise, I'm doing good. It's getting snowy again in Como. Hopefully, I'll get the day off tomorrow and we can do a little more City Boys work. We'll see. We'll see. Jacob, what's up, my dude?
Well, both of my funny bones are intact for the time being. Knock on some wood. I'm doing pretty
A good
good.
funny bone.
Cold day of work, but now I'm in the warmth of my own home, ready to talk some ball.
love to hear that. I am also blanketed up right now in the house. It is still snowy and icy outside here in Louisville. But we are on to our second installment of the City Boys Spotlight. We are breaking down every single club in the MLS. And on this episode, we are covering the Chicago Fire. And I know we have some initial thoughts and feelings about this, but I want to hear about Jacob first because I know this club means just a little bit extra to you.
It used to mean a lot more, to be fair. For those of you who don't know, which I've mentioned it a handful of times at this point, but any newcomers, my first love in the MLS was Chicago Fire. Actually, my first favorite professional soccer player was a Chicago Fire player. My grandparents had season tickets to the club back in, well, I was like age 10 through like 14 or something like that. So I got to see a fair few of Chicago Fire games when I would roll through Chicago. So this one was fun. I already knew a good chunk about the history just from my grandpa, but going through and doing my own research was really cool. Yeah, Grayson, your first initial thoughts on Chicago Fire?
Can I ask real quick, who was your favorite player? I don't know if you're gonna get into that a little bit later.
I am going to get into it a little bit later.
Okay,
Ooh.
okay. More to come, more to come. All right, all right. Chicago Fire. To me, or from at least what I can remember, I feel like Chicago Fire is a club that deserves more. Um, they're kind of a like a big team. Like I feel like the Chicago Fire should be better than they've been. I feel like they need to
That's
make
fair
some
to
big
say.
moves. I mean, of course, they signed Shaqiri, big name. We're gonna get into more of that, I'm pretty sure. But he just recently left, and yeah, it's just like a lot of things just don't pan out for the club. So I wouldn't mind seeing Chicago Fire become a successful club. I think that'd be really cool. So um, hopefully we'll get to see some better because they didn't do too hot this year. But we'll get into that too. So
I feel like Chicago is next to St. Louis. Chicago and St. Louis are the two biggest midwestern markets for sports in general. I
mm,
think that there's a very good opportunity for a good rivalry between our favorite club in St. Louis City and the Chicago Fire, given all the sports history between the Cardinals and Cubs and the Blues and Blackhawks. So I would love to see a rivalry come from that fixture. That's really what I want to see from Chicago Fire is a rivalry with St. Louis.
I
I think
would
it can come. I think it could come.
It
Just
just sucks
yeah,
because they're like Eastern Conference. So if we see them
yeah.
throughout the year, it's like a one game. I know in our first season, we saw them twice in a season, once US Open Cup, once league play. And it's just like because of such a big rivalry in all of the other sports, we're like dying to have this one with Chicago because Chicago versus St. Louis has been such a big deal for so long. So yeah, schedule makers for the MLS, get Chicago versus St. Louis twice on the schedule every year. I don't care.
Mm.
Do it.
Please, we really want it. We want it. The people want it. Give
The
it to
people want
us.
it. I think Chicago wants it too. Chicago wants some bragging rights if they beat St. Louis, and same for St. Louis. So
They want the smoke. Let's have it. Let's have a nice cook-off too. Chicago pizza versus St. Louis style pizza. Let's
Ooh,
have it.
great.
It's
I
literally the
prefer.
opposite spectrums of like thick ass pizza and non-existent pizza. Like, hey, I still love that shit though.
Well, Jacob, can you please tell us about the history of your formerly favorite club?
I would be happy to. So, interestingly enough, this club was founded October 8th, 1997. So also
Oh,
just like San Jose, a very historic club. It was actually founded on the 126th anniversary of the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. And that is why the
really?
Chicago Fire is called the Chicago Fire. Put two and two together, makes sense to me. The club's first ever head coach is the legendary Bob Bradley, and in its
Oh
inaugural
shit.
Really?
season, yeah, that surprised me too. I
That is
didn't.
pretty
Yeah, I
cool.
did not
Pretty
know
wild.
that.
Mr.
Um,
Bobby B.
in its inaugural season, Coach Bradley led the club to go on to win both the MLS Cup and the U.S. Open Club Cup in year one.
That's a very good start.
Yeah.
All right, Bob. Back off.
Um, since that time, the Fire have won three more U.S. Open Cups, one in 98, their inaugural season, one in 2000, 2003, and 2006, as well as the Supporter Shield in 2003. Trophy cabinet has some silverware in it, definitely more than St. Louis at this point, but none of late, unfortunately for them. They do have an extensive list of notable players of past with Chris Armas, Carlos Bocanegra, Frank Klopas, Brian McBride, Eric Winalda, and Jacob's first ever favorite professional soccer player and inspiration, the one and only Chris Rolfe. Now, if you guys don't know who Chris Rolfe
Mm,
was,
Wow.
he
deep cut.
was an attacking midfielder slash central midfielder.
Big dog.
Um, at the time, I was playing like sweeper stopper for St. Stephen Protomartyr, super deep cut
Big
for
shout
those of you
out.
that know. And I saw him play, and in the first game that I watched him play live, he had an electric game. Like I think he scored a goal and had an assist and like dominated the game. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that. I need to be farther up the field. I don't know who I have to talk to push me farther up the field, but I want to do what he did. Um, so that was my inspiration for then transitioning my own very way less important career into a center attacking mid. And then
That's him.
moving on to their international players from the club, Bastian Schweinsteiger,
Iconic.
he played CDM slash center back for them, kind of in like the same air as Sergio Busquets does right now for Inter Miami.
Good comparison.
And then an OG Mexican international, Guatemala Blanco.
Wow.
If you don't know who Guatemala Blanco is, pull up some highlights. That boy can play attacking mid. Um, They also had Jorge Campos, Marco Papa came
Oh,
through the Fire's youth academy, as well as Bakary Sumare. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. I remember him as a
I think
center
so.
defensive mid. And then right now, Colorado's center attacking mid, Georgi Mihailovic, I would argue
yeah.
is one of the best players to come through their academy, but their best player to come through the academy is the one and only outside back DeMarcus Beasley came up through Chicago Fire's
Legend.
academy.
Legend.
And we had mentioned Xherdan Shaqiri earlier. He also played for the club. Recently departed. He didn't have as much of an impact on the success that was hoped. Definitely a lot of beef there between him and coaches over the past. But Ethan, do you want to take us into the current state of the Chicago Fire?
I would love to, but just before I do, I have a quick note because Bastian Schweinsteiger signing for the Chicago Fire was a huge deal at the time because the Chicago Fire were actually playing St. Louis FC at Soccer Park. And I was so excited to finally have the chance to see a World Cup winner play. However, there was a
However,
clause in his contract that he was not playing on turf fields. Crazy stuff. I had
hey,
never heard of something like
I
that.
respect that.
It's a
My
smart
boy
guy.
wanted
He
to
was
keep his
toward the
ACL.
twilight of his career. I completely respect it. I just remember being horrified and shocked at that happening.
I have one question. Mr. Schweinsteiger,
Your addition to this team, is it a fair expectation to see a clear pathway towards a World Cup competition come out of Chicago?
Huh?
do you guys remember that clip? Do you
Yeah.
guys remember that legendary clip? Oh my God. Just completely lost hope in American sports journalism for a minute there. That was
Yeah.
rough.
On to their current squad, of course. I'll start with, maybe their most impactful player, their top goal scorer, their designated player, Mr. Hugo Kuipers. In 31 matches played, he started every single one, probably their highest minute total on the team. Last season, he bagged 10 goals and 2 assists. He did have, for all you stat nerds out there, he had 12.82 XG, so he actually underperformed his expected goals, which is pretty surprising for your designated player. Their top assister and also someone to keep an eye on next season, Marin Hale Selassie. I hope I'm
Yeah.
saying his name right. 27 games played, 23 games started, 5 goals and 8 assists. That is extremely creative. He did have 6.41 XG as well, so underperformed that, but he's a very creative player, similar to Christian Espinoza, like we talked about for San Jose. On their defense, their team captain, Rafael Chichos. In 28 games played, he started 26 as a total allocation player. Very impactful. Definitely their rock at the back. I would say maybe this is a far reach, but the Chicago Fire's to Italy's Giorgio Chiellini. He's their captain. He holds it down back there. Like I said, maybe a reach. It might
Yeah.
be. It might be,
I
but
think it is a reach, but
for comparison's sake, it'll do. At the goalkeeper position, they have a pretty standard, just like Roman Berkey at St. Louis City. That position is on lock by Chris Brady. Started all 33 games for them last season, kept 4 clean sheets, did have 61 goals against, which is a pretty high tally, lower than San Jose's. So it's, headed in the right direction at least. But to his credit, he made 106 saves, which is quite a lot, to be fair. That is a lot of work to do. Some other notable squad names, and we have got to talk about him. Greg Berhalter, the new coach, Triple G, in his first season at the Chicago Fire. We all know how he did at the U.S. men's national team. Thank goodness he did not end up at STLSC. I don't think he performed all that well in the MLS as a manager. I don't think he ever won silverware. So I don't have high expectations for him in his first season with the Chicago Fire. They're a squad that are rebuilding. They underperformed for a few seasons now. So he has quite a bit to do. What do you guys think Greg Berhalter's impact will be on the Chicago Fire?
You want me to
Behind
kick
the
it off?
back
Okay.
passes?
Snag that. All right. Greg is gonna be mediocre at best. I don't expect crazy amounts from him. What he is good at is man management, like being a man manager. He can manage personalities. He can get he can get single players to start performing again. What he fails at is tactics. He struggles with tactics a lot.
game
So
management. Yeah.
Yep.
yeah, what I want to see from Greg is getting the best out of some players that struggled in the past seasons. Specifically, a certain player that I want to see more from is Chris Miller, striker for Chicago Fire. I rate this guy. He used to play for Orlando City. And this last season, he only scored 2 goals, I'm pretty sure. As the striker. So I know he's getting less minutes, of course, but I think he's top class for the MLS. I think he's got to improve, and at most, I think Greg might be able to help him improve personally, but I'm not expecting Greg to win the MLS Cup
That would
with
be
this squad or
crazy.
turn this team around completely.
If correct me if I'm wrong, you two, or if you guys don't know in the comments, the one of the Gold Cup runs that Greg went on, I think he went fairly far with a heavy MLS roster. I think it was taking place at the same time that
Yeah.
um European guys had just gotten off their um seasons, and it was like, no, we're not going to pull these guys in after playing 34 straight matches overseas. Um and he went really far with a high MLS team or high MLS squad. So I think MLS is a step in the right direction as far as his career goes. As far as success with
Agreed.
Chicago Fire, I do think they are in a rebuild. So depending on what that looks like, on who they bring in to help bolster the ranks, I don't necessarily put it all up on Greg Berhalter. Like, he's got a a very good veteran MLS player there in Kellen Acosta, who's actually was up for goal of the year with that
Oh, that goal was crazy,
Which was an
by the way.
incredible goal.
60-yard boot that the wind helped out for sure on.
Oh,
Um, so just like backing guys like Kellen Acosta, the veterans, relying on that veteran presence, and then slowly implementing his like mid-block 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1 formation that he ran with the US men's national team, and just like not selling games as a manager is really my expectation for him. I am interested to see what you've got in our season predictions, though, Grayson.
for sure. Did you want to say something, Ethan?
I do actually have a few more players to
Oh
go
shit.
over
My
because
bad, my bad, my bad.
we do have, like you mentioned, the U.S. men's national team connection in Kellen Acosta. He has been pretty steadfast for them. He played in 34 games, so only started 27. Somewhat underproductive for your kind of marquee midfielder, 3 goals and 3 assists. I think they would expect more. Of course, there's a St. Louis connection in the Chicago Fire squad. Mr. Tom Barlow, he played for St. Louis Scott Gallagher back in the day. So wish him success with the Fire. A very notable player for the Chicago Fire that I would feel very sad if we did not mention is Brian Gutierrez, Guti as he is also known. He's a very good dual nat. However, he's been called up to his first U.S. men's national team camp. So Poch is locking this guy up, and that is fantastic. This kid has a very high ceiling. Couldn't tell you his age, but he scored 6 goals and 3 assists in 32 games last season in the MLS. Very, very promising player for the Chicago Fire. They are rumored to be in talks with a player. They sent an official offer to Gaetan Perrin, a 20-year-old French winger from Auxerre. However, there's nothing concrete there at the moment. So no crazy signings right now. They did sign a man from Bodo Glint, whose name is escaping me right now.
Bodo Glint.
Wherever Bodo Glen is.
Bodo's Binted. Norway.
The
It's
Norwegian club where Amal Pellegrino came from.
Look at us learning ball as we go. This could be you, guys. This could be
Philip
you.
Zinkernagel has also arrived to the Chicago
what is
Fire.
that last name?
That's a sick name.
Philip Zinkernagel has arrived to the Chicago Fire as well. So Greg is making some additions in rebuilding the squad in his first season. That is all I have to say about their current squad, though. They are in a rebuilding stage. However, they have promising veteran leadership in players like Kellen Acosta, as well as promising young players like Brian Gutierrez and Hugo Kuipers.
And Zinker Noggle.
Zinkernagle's nice.
Very promising. At the very least, his last name is.
He's gonna sell jerseys. All right. All right. So, time for the prediction side of the episode, guys. Here we go. Before, I'm gonna give you a little bit of context from last season, so you guys know what we're working with here. Chicago Fire ended the 2024 MLS season with 7 wins, 9 draws, and 18 losses, which gave them a little bit of separation from San Jose, about 9 points, because they ended with 30 points, I believe. Yeah, 30 points, only better than one team. They had 40 goals 4
Ooh.
and allowed 62 for a goal difference of -22. Not too hot there. But Kings and Queens, from the creator of Cape Clash, I got a new City Boys game for you. It's nice and easy, and it's called Crossbar. It's a game of over and unders. That's all it is. So, first round is goals of the season. Or how many goals do you think Chicago's going to score next season? Over or under? I'm going to set the crossbar at 40 goals. All you got to tell me is if you're going to sky it and take the over or bury it and take the under. All right. What do we got? Crossbar set at 40 goals, which was their tally from last season. So
I might take the over just because that feels really low. I'm gonna go over the crossbar here because Hugo Kuipers could bag maybe 15. Maybe Kellen Acosta gets 5, and then Brian Gutierrez gets 10. So, and hey, maybe their new Philip Z is a great player that can put in a lot of goals. So I'm gonna
Um,
take the over for Chicago.
I'm with you, Ethan. I think with the amount of players that underperformed their XG this year, that it just squeaks over 40 goals. I'm gonna I'm gonna call my own shot here and say they score 44 goals on the season.
okay. Okay.
Ew.
I also think that this third worst offense in the league last season will improve with these new offensive signings that may or may not hit. I still think they will improve from 40 goals. So I think I'm going to sky it this time. Um, all right, here we go. Over under. This one, the crossbar is set at 1.5 years. The question is, how long will Greg last at the Chicago Fire? Are you skying it or are you burying it?
Ooh.
1.5 years is the crossbar.
That does
Um,
seem like the average length of time a bad manager stays with a team. They give them an entire season and then a little bit into the next season.
They're like, all right, get out of here, man.
Um, I am wow, that's a good line, Grayson. I'm a Berhalter non-believer, so I'm gonna go with the under and I'm gonna bury it.
Yep, I'm smashing this one into the back of the net as well. Taking less than a year and a half. Truthfully, I would be surprised if he makes it through this first full season.
Wow.
Brutal. That's 2 goals against Greg. I'll make it a hat trick. Fuck you, dude. Damn. All right. So, oh my God, I forgot about this one. That's crazy. Okay. This one's wild. The crossbar is set at 4.5. The question is, for a team who had more penalties conceded than clean sheets, they had
Oh,
four clean sheets last season, 6 penalties conceded. Do they get over or under 4.5 clean sheets next season? They haven't made a defensive signing.
Chris
I don't know
Brady
if
is not a bad goalkeeper, to his credit. I don't think
I
he's
wouldn't put it all on him either, regardless.
yeah, 5 clean sheets. I'm gonna bury it. I'm gonna bury it. I'm gonna put him back at
Oof.
4. That's
Back and forth.
rough, but they will leak goals. Good teams will score goals on them, and I think even below average teams will score goals on them.
Well, not even trying to be different here. I think 5 clean sheets is still bad. So I'm gonna take the over on
Okay.
clean sheets. And it might just be 5.
Yeah, it's a really hard question because clean sheets isn't going to improve with their better offense. I still think they're going to leak goals. They might win more games, but I'll still think they leak goals. I'm going to take, I'm going to bury it. I think they probably get 4. They probably get 4 again.
Yeah.
But That's crossbar. I got one more question for you guys. Can Greg make the Chicago Fire a playoff team on the bubble or right back at the bottom where we found them?
I'm gonna say just under the bubble. They're an in the hunt for the bubble type team. I think they do improve. Personally, I have their win total at right around 9. It could be 10 or 8. But 9 is about like a successful amount of wins for them going into this next season. So I think they could be a bubble team.
Okay. Okay.
Jacob, I like that, and I think it's very fair, especially given that the East is a little bit weaker than the West. The fact that New England was able to be in contention for a playoff spot as long as they were last season, I think says a lot. So if Chicago can score, I think their problem is scoring goals. If they can score more goals next season, then I could see them contending for a playoff spot come decision day.
Okay. I don't have too much faith in them. I think that they will improve, but they will still be near the bottom of the pack. I'm thinking fourth or fifth in the bottom. Not making playoffs, not necessarily fighting for playoffs with, 3 games left in the season, but I think they will improve. We'll become a better squad. Hopefully, Greg will last, and hopefully, we'll see a pretty decent Chicago here in the future. So we will see. Any last notes, boys, on this squad?
Yeah, if you know more about your team, the Chicago Fire, than we do, please feel free to educate us in the comments. We
Oh,
are
yes, sir.
just 3 dudes talking ball and trying to learn more about the MLS.
Yep.
So educate us. You don't have to be mean because we clap back pretty hard, but you can educate us in the comment section.
I got two final things. First, if you are a Chicago podcast listening to this and you want to start beef, hit us up. We are interested in starting beef with the Chicago podcast. Friendly or not, we're in for it. Secondly, I think it's cool that Chicago plays at Soldier Field. Generally, I am a soccer stadium purist. I feel like that is the best environment to play a soccer game in. However, I think with Chicago being such an urban environment, it's really cool that they play in the same stadium as the Bears.
They did
Yeah,
have
Bears.
like 6 years where they played on like the outskirts of Chicago. And hilariously enough, though, that was the time in my life that I was going to Chicago Fire games.
Damn.
Um, yeah, I did really only one game in the season ticket holder area that my grandpa had seats, and then one game when we went up, we went to the supporter section, and I got hooked immediately. Just a 10-year-old screaming obscenities at professional soccer players had me hooked, bro.
That's a story as old as time.
Yeah. I'm not gonna repeat the things that we said over there, but it was a good time. And I know the Soccer Fire faithful go hard for their club, so I hope they get better. I hope they have a better time rooting for their team this coming season.
I hear that. If all hearts and minds are clear, then gentlemen, Jacob, I'm going to take a crack at the outro.
Hit it,
Oh,
brother.
If you are new here, do not forget to subscribe. Like I said earlier, we are nearing 100 subscribers. Please, please, please. We appreciate you very much for joining us. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, please follow and rate 5 stars. And most importantly, our most important call to action, tell your mother you love her. Thank you for joining us. This has been the City Boys. MLS. MLS.
let's go. So goofy.
Where the fuck is stop recording? Oh, there it is.